I was at the hostage forum running the influencer program, and an influencer who I never heard of before, and she just had made um, $1.2 million for the brand that prior holiday season. In fact, she broke all the sales records. She went to like the kibbutzim and just posted, about it. Nothing political, nothing against the Palestinians, nothing against them. And she got an email after she posted that she was fired. No explanation whatsoever.
After October 7th, the world saw a war on the ground. But there was another war happening that almost nobody was talking about. People who spoke up started losing everything. Brand deals disappeared. Income vanished. Some influencers lost their entire careers overnight. At the same time, inside Israel, you were working directly with hostage families, seeing the human side of this that most people will never understand. And somewhere in the middle of all that, you realized that this wasn't just a media battle. It was something much bigger. So let's start here. Brian Spivak, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Daniel. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Let's get into it. What exactly did you see? Did people actually lose their income just for speaking up about Israel?
Yeah, it's a good nuanced question actually, because when I talk about what I do and how it all got started, I say that people who stood up for Israel lost their brand partnerships, they lost their income. And you asked the right question, which is it really because they spoke about Israel? I would say for the most part, yes, but there were definitely organizations or brands that did not want to have anything to do with the conflict. So they're like, I don't care what side you're on. I don't want you talking about it at all. But in the end, these were folks that were talking about Israel, and the end result was that they lost their income, they lost their livelihood, their brand partnerships, because they were speaking up about the war and specifically for Israel.
Now, how bad did it get? Are we talking about like side income? Are we talking about entire careers?
Uh, yeah, I mean, it really runs the gamut completely. I mean, I had people reach out to me, and some of them were crying. Some of them were telling me that they lost, tens of thousands. Some people lost hundreds of thousands of dollars. And I was telling this to somebody recently, and they said to me, he pointed to himself and he said millions. It was Lior Raz from Fauda. So, it really runs the gamut. Now, when you get to that scale, presumably you have multiple business ventures, multiple sources of income. But if you're just a content creator and that's the only thing that you do is create content online, that is your main or only source of revenue coming in. If you're strong on YouTube, YouTube can pay pretty decently for views, but other platforms, you're really relying on brand partnerships. And I've had people lose their entire careers. I have stories of people who literally got fired just from being here in Israel and posting that they were here, and completely, like, totally knocked down their career completely. So it really runs the gamut.
Can you give me an example? Like, what's the worst case that you personally saw?
Yeah, the worst case that I saw was what I kind of just started to allude to. I was at the hostage forum running the influencer program, and an influencer who I never heard of before. And I actually, the funny thing is that I hadn't heard of most of the influencers who I ended up meeting. And she's a beauty influencer, and she came to Israel, and we did some interviews, and she was, meeting with hostage families, and she ended up getting an email, and she went to like the kibbutzim and just posted, about it. Nothing political, nothing against the Palestinians, nothing against Hamas. Like, literally just like, this is what's happening to our hostages and our citizens. She gets an email. Sorry, actually, just for context, she was on one of these home shopping network sites representing a brand. So the brand pays her to promote the brand on these big shopping network sites. She just had made $1.2 million. I believe that was the number, $1.2 million for the brand that prior holiday season. In fact, she broke all the sales records. And then in January was when I met her, and she got an email after she posted that she was here saying that she's fired. No explanation whatsoever. And it could only be that it was something related to that because you break sales records, and why would anyone want to just fire you without giving you any reason right afterwards? So yeah, I've seen, and by the way, I still get messages today. Literally this week, I got a message from somebody saying, "Yeah, I lost all my brand partnerships. Nobody wanted to work with me." So listen, it's still, if even if they didn't, even though it happened right 2 years ago, people are still feeling the effects. Meaning there is no market for them because some of them went all in on Israel, and so how can they now make money creating content? There's no like full resource for them. And that was, without skipping ahead too much, but that was the reason why I started this company.
Do you think that things were worse back then on October 7th? That things are better for influencers nowadays, or has it gotten worse? Like, if today, if somebody speaks up publicly, are they risking their livelihood the way they did back then?
Yeah, great question. I think it's better now for sure. I think that back then, if you spoke up on behalf of Israel, you felt like you were like really doing the right thing, and they were. But the impact was very severe. Like people really, they legitimately lost their money. Now there is this, all of a sudden, this new economy and this new marketplace for influencers where if you get good enough and you make a name for yourself, people invite you to certain events and you're getting partnerships and you're going to galas and your phone is ringing off the hook. Now the problem is that that's probably for the top, you know, 1% and then 10. But a lot of that middle chunk, their phone is not ringing. And that's where we like to sit and service, is that kind of like small to medium size content creators, because they're the ones that really, really need it the most. So I would say there is this market now that has been created, and there's a lot more nonprofits that need influencers to kind of represent their brand.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you're going to lose out on the brands that don't want to, speak out on this conflict. But I'm sure there are many brands that are pro-Israel and that would specifically want to be, with these types of influencers. So, like, what kind of brands do you work with nowadays? If you can give me some examples of who they are.
Yeah, so some of the brands that we're working with, I would say in general, Barzal Media works with brands that are for profit and nonprofit companies. Now, the nonprofit companies, it's going to be pretty obvious, right? You have, let's say an organization like the Jewish Agency or Meir Panim, which helps feed hungry people in Israel. They are going to really want to partner with people that are speaking about Israel all the time because their audience is attracting that. Now, on the other side of things, we have brands that are for profit companies. They, like let's say a skincare company or a language learning app that we, work with now, they don't want to necessarily work with people that are talking about Israel all the time. That's not their niche. They want to be working with travel creators, they want to be working with beauty influencers. So we tailor to both sides here. And so when we say pro Israel content creators, we're actually referring to people that happen to be pro Israel, right? You can be a beauty influencer. All you talk about is beauty all day long, but maybe you've stood up for Israel, after October 7th, or maybe when, it's for you light your Shabbat candles and you post about how proud you are to be a Jew, whatever the case might be. First, you are this beauty influencer. Yeah, maybe 5% of the time you're talking about what you're passionate about and your culture and your heritage.
Wow, so cool. Maybe tell me a little bit more about that nonprofit that you mentioned, the Mayor Panim. What exactly do
Yeah.
they do?
So yeah, we started working with them. I would say the end of 2025. They're an incredible organization. They're basically providing hot meals for over 650,000 people. Actually, I think they provide 650,000 meals every single year, and they're helping Holocaust survivors. They're helping families of soldiers. They do incredible amount of good work. So we've actually been working with them to find influencers who want to talk about that and who basically can attract new donors. So what's great is that money, that let's say Mayor Panim is spending on influencer marketing is having a massive impact because they're finding new donors. because of it. So influencers are getting paid to talk about this great charity, so it makes them feel good, and they're finding new donors. So it's a real win-win, and it's great to work with great charities like Meir Panim.
Yeah,
Yeah, you
I
should look
mean,
them up.
if anybody would want to contribute, they definitely should.
Yeah.
We'll put the link in the description. But what I hear is that there's a lot of poverty in Israel, especially after October 7th. People lost their jobs and people had to relocate, and a lot going on, right? I mean, has I'm sure their demand has gotten a lot bigger after October 7th, right?
Yeah, most of these organizations, these nonprofits, they've had to seriously scale up and things get much harder. And also, just especially things affecting soldiers and the families of soldiers and people who have lost loved ones since October 7th. They've really had to step up their operations and expand. I don't know the numbers offhand, but I know that they definitely have had to increase their output for sure.
Nowadays, like you said, people are afraid to speak up for Israel, right? Because they're going to get hit financially. Now, if you speak up for the other side, for example, you might get rewarded for it, right? So, do you think that people will actually speak something that they don't actually believe in for financial gain?
I I th It's a good question. I think that there are definitely people that will speak up against Israel for financial gain. I do think that there is a subset, not a subset, but there's the other side, which is, to me, I like to focus on the positive though. I'm like, I don't like to hear the haters, and I really don't focus on that. So what I look towards is, and maybe that's more of a juicy conversation. Maybe we could touch on it. We'll see. But what I like to focus on is, are there people who feel like maybe they're indifferent, right? And they're like, oh, okay, cool. So like, I'll just hate on Israel because everyone's doing that. Yeah, I think that there is definitely that happening. But again, what I want to focus on is, are there people that feel strongly about their support for Israel and they are feeling like they don't want to talk about it? That to me hurts. And so those are the conversations that I like to dig deeper into. And by the way, I don't necessarily think that if you support Israel, that means that you should infuse it into all of your content, right? So there's a nuance there about how to go about showing your support for Israel. And so I get asked the question all the time, is like, what can I do? Right. Should I post online all the time if they're not a content creator? I actually say to people, you probably shouldn't. And I think the reason is, again, if you're a big content creator, sure. But I think what tends to happen when, like, let's say just a regular Joe Schmo who has a phone in their pocket, who has Instagram, and is just watching content all the time on Instagram, and they're like, oh, I'm just going to start posting. I'm like, I think that you can be more influential in your particular spaces where you work, maybe where you do yoga, maybe it's a book club, whatever the case might be. Maybe it's literally on the ground, on the streets. That's where you can be influential. Just because you have a phone in your pocket doesn't mean that you should, broadcast to your, 76 followers. And you know what that does? That scratches that itch for you. Like, I did my part. Like, not really. So I like when people think outside the box, and I want them to realize that even though I'm all about, influencer marketing and social media, I sometimes want people to realize that there are other ways that they can be influential.
Now, you were inside the hostage forum. What did people not see over there? What was that like?
Wow. How much time do we have? I would say, wow. I mean, one of the things that, and I just talked about this yesterday because I spoke to somebody who is releasing an incredible documentary, and we might be partnering with them on it. It's all about these powerful women who, it's called Ima. I haven't seen it yet, but it's about these like really strong women, and their untold stories of, like, being mothers of hostages and things like that. And so I said to the producer, I said, that is like a story that resonates with me so strongly because when I was at the hostage forum, I literally spent every waking hour with the families of hostages. And I would have lunch with them. I would sit with them. I would make introductions. I would hear the stories of their children, of their brothers, sisters. And what I noticed was the strongest people were the women. These mothers, sisters of hostages, they would walk around with their heads held up high. They would give positive encouragement to the volunteers. They would be wearing the smile on their face. And you just be like, how do you do that? Like, how do you come with so much strength and positivity and not losing hope? So that to me was one of the most impressive things to see.
Yeah. What did you learn from them that kind of changed the way I'm sure after October 7th, you were shocked as everybody was, but, being there, seeing them in person, that, the hostage families, did it kind of take it to a new level for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's weird because you become a little bit desensitized to it. You're surrounded by them. And it's like these just normal, regular people. Which I think one of the reasons why I had such a good connection with many of the families was because I just treated them normally. It's also I treat celebrities and influencers also like they're just regular people because they are. And I think that's what allows me to just have like a good relationship with really many of the people that I interact with is because people just want to be treated like regular human beings. And so I think that was something that I saw that I noticed, and people wanted to be heard. They wanted to tell the story of their loved ones. To me, it was the and now that I'm thinking about it, is this sheer stamina of these families to continuously tell their story over and over again. I mean, the amount of times that I heard Omer Shem Tov's story, um, and it just never felt stale. It never felt like, oh, here I'm hearing it again. And from his parents and his brother or his cousin hearing the story, it was always told with passion. It was just incredible to see the stamina of, let's say Shelley Shem Tov of doing, I don't know, maybe like 20 interviews a day. I don't know the number, but it's incredible. And she never, ever, ever, ever said no. No one in that family said no. I don't think any family really said no, I can't do an interview or I don't, but like they were there all day. And so they were kind of like the go-to family that I would always ask because they were always around. They were one of the founders of the hostage forum. And it was just incredible. No matter what, they always just said, sure, no problem. Didn't matter. They didn't ask like, oh, who is it? Are they a big celebrity or how many people? They didn't care. They just said, sure, no problem. Didn't ask questions. So the sheer stamina of these families to continuously tell their story with passion and with so much, feeling was really impressive to see also.
How did you get involved with it to begin with, like, with the hostage forum?
Yeah, so I basically it was after October 7th, everyone was just volunteering different places. I was volunteering at a hotel, I was volunteering at this place, and I got a phone call from a friend who just had a random question. I was like, "Hey man, where you been in the last 3 weeks?" And he said, "I've been volunteering at the Hostages and Missing Families Forum." And I'm like, "What the heck is that?" And it's like, "Yeah, that's where all the hostage families are." And I was like, "Do they need any help?" And he's like, "Yeah, sure. Like, is anyone doing influencer marketing for them?" And he's like, "I don't think so." And at the time, I had started working at an influencer marketing agency, from February 2023 up until October 2023. And so that was like my new background. I was by no means any expert at all. And so I showed up and I was like trying to find uh, who to meet with, who to like basically like there was no like job interview. So I remember I walked in and there was like a receptionist and there was like two receptionists there, but it was like this chaotic scene of like just camera crews running around, families all over. There was musicians. There was like I ran into Wolf Blitzer in the elevator. Like it was just like it was insane. And the secretaries were just like trying to direct people to go to different places. And it was like a scene from a movie where you're like, Dr. Smith's office, like, please hold, Dr. Smith's, please hold. Like it was just chaos. And I ended up like waiting in the lobby, because they're like, oh yeah, you need to speak to this person. And I was like, I don't know where they are. They're like, I don't know, I can't help you. So I was like waiting in the lobby trying to find this person that I was supposed to meet with. And then meanwhile, I heard somebody just look at me and like, Brian, is that you? And I was like, yeah, it was like my old CMO from like a few companies before. And she's like, what are you doing here? I'm like, I'm here to help. she's like, yeah, come join my team. So originally I kind of just started like just learning the ropes and understanding what they were doing on the marketing team. Ended up creating my own team and like really starting the influencer marketing team at the hostage forum. But there's a funny story is on that first day, I was like, great, I'll see you guys tomorrow. And the next day I show up and all of it is gone. No hostage posters, no families, no secretaries. And I was like, what the heck is going on? Did we free the hostages? And this was like literally like the third week of the war. And apparently they had moved. So it was like a scene from a movie where you'd be like, I swear it was all here and like there were families and like there was Wolf Blitzer. Like, yeah, sure. Like, yeah, they moved and I didn't get the memo.
Well, for you personally, when you heard on October 7th that, they had kidnapped 250 hostages, how did you actually think that we would get them all out? I mean, some were deceased, but did you personally think that they were all going to come out? Like, was that your feeling? And to see it now, how does it feel for you? I mean, because you were so involved with it.
Mhm. Wow. I haven't gotten that question before, but it's a heavy one. I would say my feeling in the beginning of the war when I heard that there were hostages, I was like, this is like worse than death, and there was a father like very famously said, like said something like that. I did not think that there was going to be any sort of deals, or I didn't think they were going to be released, or I just didn't have that expectation. I don't think I really thought about it too deeply, but I was like, this is bad. This is really, really bad. And there were certain hostages that I just had this, I don't know. I was like, I don't think that they're going to make it. Like, I just didn't. And they did. They did. There were certain, I don't want to say specific names, but I remember just like, I was like, there's no way Hamas is going to release this guy. Like, I thought that. I'm like, and in the end, they were released, and listen, some sooner, some much, much later. But I was shocked that it actually really, really happened. And I don't know. I mean, I think so much of it was just like, Hashem, having his hand and just somehow influencing these negotiations. Obviously there were so many terrible outcomes that happened, but it was, to me, it's a miracle that any of them were released. So I didn't have high expectations, let's just say.
Now, inside Israeli society, for a divide, some were kind of focused hostages. We got to get them out at all costs. The other side was hostages are important, but we have to win this war. We have to defeat Hamas. And from what I remember, there was a big struggle over there. What did you think of that? Of that kind of a divide in the society?
Yeah, so obviously it's there's a lot of political elements that came about, and it was, to me, it was really, really hard to see how political the hostage situation became. Obviously it became like either if you're for BB, then you don't care about the hostages, right? Like, which was like such a ridiculous such a ridiculous thing to say. Um and I think part of the problem was, without getting too much into the politics of it, if you build an organization whose sole mission is to advocate and free the hostages, then you're going to do everything you can to do that. Now, there's certain things that you can influence and there's certain things that you cannot influence. You cannot influence Hamas. There is no influencing them. They're a terror organization. You can't go in and literally try and rescue them. That's the job of the IDF. So what are you left with? If you're an organization that is geared towards trying to free the hostages, the only influence that you can actually have is locally on your own government. And so it's kind of like if you give somebody a hammer, then everything they see is a nail. That's kind of like what you're doing in a certain case. Like, you've built an organization whose sole mission is to free the hostages and to advocate for them. So you're going to naturally do everything you can, and you're going to protest, and you're going to be in the streets, and you're going to disregard everything else because your mission is to free the hostages. And so it's really hard for me to sit hear and say, how could they, say at all cost, right? Achshav, all this stuff. And, we don't care, release all these prisoners. Like, how could they do that? They don't care. Now, I think a lot of them are, driven by ultra leftist ideology. But then there's a portion of them that are just like, you know, regular people who just want the hostages to come home. And if that is the thing that you've been so attached to, then you're going to figure out at all costs, how do I do that? And yeah, then okay, then the question, well, do you want a terrorist to be released and then they'll end up killing, and killing somebody else? But like, you can't have that conversation with your sole mission is to free the hostages. So it's very, nobody talks about that. Nobody says that. But a lot of times when these like political arguments come up, I'm trying to understand like how these things really, really manifest and how they become pervasive in society with me not knowing the political spectrum so much. I'm not into the weeds of the politics. It's one of the reasons why I, don't look my age, is because I don't sweat over politics. But I try and understand the psychology behind why people attach themselves to different causes and what those causes really mean and how they're able to sway such influence, whether it's Black Lives Matter, the trans movement, the Me Too movement. All of those movements have been hijacked, if you think about it. And it's not because they started out with the intention of doing something bad. They actually started out probably with really, really good intentions. But like many movements, they become hijacked. And the hostage forum and the plight of the hostages, unfortunately, kind of became hijacked. And it's sad to see that it became so political. But when you actually think about it, and again, without going to the extremists that were really pushing it, you can see how that could really happen when you realize that if your sole mission is to free the hostages, where can you influence? You can only influence your government.
Yeah. And if you're going to have some political gains from this, bring down your political rival, then you will use the hostages for that. What did you think about the way the international media covered the hostages? It seems like if you were on the Palestine side or whatever, they couldn't condemn Hamas and they didn't really want to talk about the hostages. You saw people tearing down hostage posters in New York. What was your view on how they covered the hostages internationally?
It's interesting. I haven't thought about that too much, weirdly, because I think like when I was at the hostage forum, I was like so in it that I was also like not paying attention to so much in the know. Like I really was like, I mean, I was working a full-time job and also volunteering full-time. Like I was literally every waking hour at the hostage forum. And so I didn't have time for noise. And if you think about it also, I was volunteering at the hostage forum. Everyone wanted to do something with the hostages. All of a sudden it became like this hot thing. So, and people knew that I was doing that. And so my phone was like ringing off the hook. Oh, how can I help? I want to come bring a cake. I want to do this. It was insane. It was crazy. And so I wasn't paying attention so much to the news. But what I will say is, I think, and from what I saw, the mainstream, I don't want to say mainstream media, but I think the media coverage was actually, I think it seemed like it was pretty decent for the hostages and their plight. And I think a lot of it had to do with the um the the international media team that we had, right? So there was a team of volunteers that were the international media team. There was like 2 desk stations for them, and there were probably anywhere between 8 to 12 people on that team, and they were responsible for setting up media interviews for the families of the hostages. I think that there are probably some incidents where they like said some ridiculous things, but the fact that they had them on quite often was a really good sign. And I might be off by saying that I feel like it wasn't so bad, because I'm sure there are tons of cases where it was really bad, but I wasn't paying so much attention to it. I would just see all these interviews happening. And to me, that was like a positive thing.
Looking back, before October 7th and making this decision to do what you did, start Barzal Media, volunteer at the hostage forum, how has that kind of changed your life, and how do you feel that nowadays? Like, are you a different person now?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, before October 7th, I was just from a professional standpoint, I was just a regular guy, at a tech job. Like, that's it. I never was doing advocacy. Um, yeah, I started to take like some leadership roles in my, community here in Tel Aviv, but nothing that, was super, life changing and had a massive impact on society. And so what I'm doing now, I never ever ever thought I would do it. I really think that it's, to a certain degree circumstantial. Like anybody could have been in this place. What I did differently was that I just said yes. I just and that's one of the things that has completely changed my life is that I just take a leap. I take a step. I say yes. I go out. I do things. And that has led me to accomplish incredible things that I never, ever thought I could do just by saying yes. And I mean, just a classic example, not a classic example, but a great example of that is I struggled with public speaking. I struggled with actually being able to articulate myself. I felt like I actually really I had like a slight, I don't know, we're going off course here, but I had a slight traumatic brain injury when I was probably like 8 years ago, playing ice hockey here in Israel. And it affected me cognitively, and I really struggled with it, and most people actually don't know about this at all. And I remember like listening to podcasts, and I would just like hear people, and I'm like, how do they just speak off the cuff like that? Like I could not fathom how they do that. And here I am, 7, 8 years later, going on podcasts, speaking publicly, not even needing to prepare for a speech, not needing to prepare for a podcast. And so to me, it's just like an absolute miracle. But I owe so much of it to just taking a leap, saying yes. And one of the things that completely changed my life was a mantra that I came up with, which was, it was like a New Year's resolution, which was say yes to things that make you uncomfortable, but that are objectively good. And it changed my life.
Wow. I want to ask you, we think we have free speech, at least in the West, in America. Do you think that brands, from what you're saying, they actually have power to control what people say? Like, is money becoming the way narratives are controlled?
Wow. For sure. I mean, absolutely. But I think it's been that way for a long time. I think if you think about the power of businesses, you think of the power of advertising, you think the power of sponsorships, it's been happening for a while. Ultimately, if you're doing some sort of endorsement for a public figure, you have some sort of control. Now the problem is that it's become very political, and what is considered things that somebody shouldn't say, right? So like I don't know, maybe like 30 years ago it was like, all right, like just don't say the N word. Like that's it, right? Like, well, you're controlling what I say. Yeah, don't. Yeah. Now it's like, hey, he, said that, there are two genders. It's like, what's wrong with that? Well, that implies, and so things have become very, very political, very, very quickly. And so brands definitely have exerted some sort of influence and control over people that they work with. I think that they have gone way, way too far, and the pendulum has swung so far that I think it's actually starting to swing back and normalize, where brands are like, I don't want to I don't need to have a political stance on everything. I don't need to get involved in politics. I don't need to be talking about every issue. And I think it's, there's, the death of like DEI, that's going away. There's a lot of things that just became so mainstream and are now going away. Well, obviously they just didn't make any sense. I mean, I realized that from day one. And now people are starting to get a clue. So I think that the pendulum is starting to swing back the other way.
You used to live in America and you made Aliyah, right? What year did you move to Israel?
I made Aliyah in 2014, in the middle of Tzuk Eitan, the last war, the last,
Wow.
last, last war. Yeah.
Good 12 years.
Yep.
Why do people think that Israel is something, completely different than reality? What do people get completely wrong about life in Israel? How is it different than America? Like, maybe you can speak on that.
Well, aside from the obvious, like ridiculous anti-Israel stuff, I don't need to touch on that because everyone knows. I don't know, I think to a certain degree, like there's just this whole other side of people get fed information, and Israel is like this unique country that has a different set of rules that applies to it. And there's a massive double standard, and so yeah, that feeds into anti-Israel narratives that people just don't understand. But what I would say is, to me, the difference of living here in Israel versus living in America, to me, every single day feels like my life has meaning. And I feel like in America, it's the opposite. Like people are losing meaning left and right, and the things that people complain about are like, my Amazon delivery was 4 hours late. It's like my show got canceled. It's like, what, really? Like, that's like, it's just, it's a different meaning to life here. First of all, every single dollar you spend at a coffee shop or at a restaurant or buying anything is literally, you are supporting and investing in the Jewish people and the state of Israel. Even just paying your taxes is, you could think about it as like as an amazing thing. Like, I'm supporting the state of Israel, right? Like, and what's great is that Jews who live in the diaspora are paying taxes too, to a certain degree, right? They're getting a benefit too, right? We get benefits too, but they're donating to the state of Israel in a lot of different ways. They're supporting our ambulances. They're supporting, you know, the Jewish agency, whatever the case might be. And now what's interesting is that we have a campaign coming up with the Jewish agency, which is helping to promote Aliyah and get, more people to actually come to Israel, because they just launched this new initiative, which is 0% income tax for people making Aliyah in 2026. So I'll talk about a plug. Yeah.
So, so would you encourage, all Jews around the world to move to Israel, make Aliyah, or do you think it should be more of a case to case basis?
I think that most Jews should be living here in Israel. Absolutely. I think that, the West and really outside of America outside of Israel, you're seeing the downfall of the West. You're seeing whether it's the woke left or the hard right, or you're seeing, the Islamic, takeover of countries and cities. You're just seeing the downfall of it. And I actually saw this sign when I made the decision to make Aliyah. I saw the writing on the wall. When Obama was elected, I realized, I said, this is the beginning of the end of America. And people thought I was crazy. They're like, what are you talking about? I was right. It was literally it used to be called political correctness, right? Like, if you think about like who you would want as president in terms of the rhetoric now, like, it would be a dream to go back to the way Obama spoke. Right now, like the Democratic Party and the left is so. I mean, he's a moderate now, but that's where I saw America going. I was like, this doesn't like flatline. This only gets ratcheted up. And it's the nature of like being progressive, right? It has the word progress in it. There's no stopping being progressive. Whatever the goalpost is today, it gets moved. So, I saw the writing on the wall, and, now that of course is leading to more and more anti-Semitism. There's no value system in place, and people are resorting to classic anti-Semitism, and it's only going to get worse. It's not going to get better. That's for sure. And so, when do you decide to make Aliyah? Like, is it when they're literally with guns at your door, or is it when they're only stabbing like 10 people a week? Like, when are you going to decide to do that? So I think it's a matter of time, but yeah.
Ryan, I want to thank you for your time. Maybe you can tell us how to find Barzal Media and how to stay in touch with you. And if you want to leave us with a final message, if there's anything we didn't touch upon in this interview, you're more than welcome.
I mean, yeah, final message, I guess, would be, if you are a brand that supports Israel, and just in your heart, you can be an Israeli brand, you could be a brand that's owned by Jews or just allies. You love Israel and you want to, do influencer marketing, contact us. Or if you're a nonprofit organization and you want to do influencer marketing or any sort of media, actually, we become a full service media agency, helping everything from PR, to executive storytelling to website building, social media consulting, you name it. So, yeah, come find us, support us, follow us, share our message because the impact that it has is just tremendous. It helps the organizations, it helps pro Israel content creators, it helps people say, you know what? I was thinking about standing up for Israel, but I'm not sure. But I actually know there's an organization or there's a company that will find me brand partnerships because I'm standing up for Israel. That alone is a massive difference maker.
Before you go, give me 10 seconds. This actually matters. Like Brian mentioned in our conversation, there are families in Israel choosing between food and everything else tonight. Right now, Meir Panim is feeding them with dignity, not handouts. If you support Israel, this is one of the most real ways to show it. Link below, even a few dollars makes a real difference. Thank you.